that's the whole story with Pocahontas and Captain Smith took place right there in Jamestown, which is, like I said, right down the street.
Well, that's quite a coincidence because where my wife comes from, there's a place called after Pocahontas called I
Oh,
can't
that's
remember. It's called where my wife comes from. She used to live in a place called Camelford,
hmm
and nearby there's a place named after Pocahontas.
Oh, wow.
It's a very
Because I
strange
know
world, isn't it?
she actually died over there in England, I believe.
Yes, there's actually people don't realise this. They think that she stayed in America, but she actually stayed quite a long time in Britain. I think there's information out there on the interweb. I probably would have to look it up. I don't know the full story, but I think that'd
Yeah,
be an interesting thing to look up.
there is. There's plenty in John Smith, Captain Smith, and Pocahontas. They there's various versions of what happened between them two, but it seems like she really just was interested in some things that he had to trade. He was trying to trade with the chief for food to get them through the winter, and she was interested in something that he had, and you know, she talked her father into trading with him and to give them food, and there was even stories about how her father went to kill him, and she asked her father to spare his life, but she ended up marrying a man named John Rolfe, and it was with John Rolfe that she went back to England where she lived her final days.
See, a lot of people listening will probably think, "Oh, I didn't know that." That's why I like talking to people like you, Jeff, because you've done you do a lot of historical research. It's very important to keep the history of where you live alive and kicking.
Exactly. Yeah, I really like I said. I really like history, and I think it goes hand in hand with the paranormal reports, with the tales of ghosts and such. Because without the history, you don't have the hauntings.
Exactly, and it's good to have the background because when you actually look into it, and I imagine when you go to investigations with it, you have to make sure that you've done the history first to make so that you know the background of what's going happening.
That's exactly right. And you want to know. Some people go in blind, and I don't like to do that because for one, I'm not trying to prove to anybody that I, you know, found anything or didn't find anything. But for my own evidence that I'm trying to get, I want to go in and I want to know what trigger objects could I use. Is there anything? What's the story here? What's the reports about this place? Who lived here? So I know if should I bring a doll that looks like it's from colonial times because people have seen a little girl in a colonial outfit, or should I bring a deck of cards because it's haunted by a gambler? Should I bring a cigar because the man who used to smoke or used to own the place liked to smoke cigars? So I love to find out, like I said, the entire history of the place so we know what trigger objects to bring, as well as what questions to ask. If we can think of some specific questions to ask about the location or the people that live there, perhaps we could generate a better response through our EVP sessions and such.
Yes, a lot of people are doing that more now. There's much more respect towards spirits or ghosts now than there used to be. Because a lot of people, I'm not being nasty or whatever, tend to poke them a bit sometimes, which I disagree with.
Right, right.
What do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think there's got to be a certain level of respect that's maintained, especially, you know, depending on the location. Because, for example, I'll give you one example. We did an investigation of the battleship North Carolina a few years back, and this was a battleship that was used during World War II. It was in every offensive, and there was believed to be the spirit of one of the sailors still lingering on the ship. So, in a place like that, this is someone who died during battle. The hull of the ship was torpedoed, and we would of course have respect for somebody like that. We wouldn't want to go into where this spirit is possibly trapped and start provoking them, start trying to make them mad, because if the spirit is there, he didn't really do anything to deserve that. And so we, in
Jeff,
our questioning, we asked if you're all right with us being
Jeff,
here. Yes,
sorry to interfere, but we'll be going over to a break soon. So could you kindly continue this story after the break for me?
absolutely. I'll be glad to.
Thank you, Jeff.
You are listening to WPHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.
Hi, welcome back to the Halsey Remark Show at 23 minutes past the hour. And my guest is Jeff Santos, and he's going to carry on the story he was telling me earlier. Sorry about that, Jeff.
Oh, not at all. Yeah. So we were talking about being respectful, just not really provoking. And with this battleship we're on, it was a World War II battleship, and like I said, there were believed to be spirits of sailors that were still on the ship. So we were in this back part of the ship that was originally torpedoed back in the 40s, and it was repaired. And we're asking questions, and we come to the question, we say, if you want us to leave, could you knock on something for us? And sure enough, you hear this knocking back there in the ship. So in that case, we didn't stay any longer. It wasn't anything about being scared or, oh, there's something creepy here. It was more so, out of respect. This sailor, it's potentially the spirit of a sailor who lost his life in service of country and God, and is still here on the ship. This is his territory. So out of respect, let's do what he's asking and leave. So we left that part of the ship. I do have to say, when there's been cases where there has been more of a sadistic spirit that's lingered behind, there was one I believe it was St. Albans Sanitarium, which was a asylum out in Radford, Virginia. And down there, they had the case where in the boiler room there was a spirit who hated women, and they said, "Don't send women down there alone because the spirit will, people have been scratched and this, that, and the other thing." But of course, the females on our team jumped at the opportunity and said, "Oh no, we're going down there alone." And they were going to go down there and stand up to whatever was there. Nothing happened when they went down there, but I guess that's kind of an example of sometimes where we will do something to try to trigger a response if the spirit doesn't like women, like sometimes, and it's like a malicious spirit. Sometimes we'll send women, and vice versa. If there was a place up in it was the Weems Spots Museum, and the spirit of the man lingered in one of the rooms, and he didn't like men up there. Men kept getting pushed down the stairs and stuff like that. So of course we sent the men up there. So sometimes we're dealing with a spirit like that, we will test things like that. But the typical spirit that's lingering in a place that's not malevolent by any means, we always go in with respect. You never know what is going to be going through the mind of a spirit that's potentially there. Could be disoriented. It could seem to them like they just died, or they may not even know that they've passed on. Sometimes it might be a person who owned the house before and who's attached to it for some kind of sentimental reasons and really has nothing, no negative intentions towards the residents or anything like that. Because we do a lot of residential investigations too.
It's funny you said about women, because I was talking to someone the other day about female disciples in the Bible that got written out by Emperor Constantine, because basically he didn't like women either.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, he was on a program on Channel 4, which is over here in the UK, and basically it was telling you about the female disciples of Christ and how basically they were helping Christ at the time with money and supplies. And when you think about it, with the culture back then, it would have been hard for a man to talk to a woman on their own because it would have been totally unacceptable.
Right, absolutely.
And obviously Emperor Constantine not liking women, and also he rewrote the Bible because obviously he was a victor. He didn't like the pagan side of it, so he basically rewrote that all out.
Mm-hmm.
Which I found very fascinating. I mean, as I say, I'm not overly religious man, but I just find it interesting how things get altered by the victors.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing I got to say, and I'll tread lightly, of course. Around here, there's a lot of Civil War history. A lot of Civil War battlefields. Virginia was, has as many, if not more, Civil War battlefields than any other state. And a lot of the places we investigate are from places that are haunted by Civil War soldiers, be they hospitals or most of them were hospitals at one time or another, during the war. And the thing is, like you said, the victor writes the history. So the North won the war, and that's the side of the history that we hear the most. And I feel more so in recent times, the history from the Confederate Army's point of view or from the South's point of view has been presented a little more and more. But that's the thing, exactly like you said, the victors write the history. So we really only hear one side of it unless we really dig and find some resources, some old journals that were written by people who lived during those times, whatever we can to get a window into that time period.
I think I'm correct that the Ouija board was, not invented or I suppose the word is invented around the war between the South and North as a way of communication.
Yeah, I believe back then, there was, at least it was the start. It was probably very close to the start of the spiritualist movement. which was in the early